disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen.
We're still getting details on the Charlie Kirk assassination, who's actually involved, what actually happened. You know, we're telling different stories from different people. You know, the FBI is telling us that it was this 22-year-old that somehow was able to climb the rooftop. He was, you know, in one outfit at the start, but then changed his clothes and got onto the rooftop with this rifle, you know, shot a precision shot at Charlie Kirk from a long distance that seems almost near impossible that someone could accomplish unless they were like military trained. And, you know, I even said going into this, like, I'm going to be very skeptical of what the FBI is putting out there and what law enforcement and what the State Department has to say about it. Because we know from time and time and time again with all these instances that they have lied to us, they have deceived us, they have played us, they have concocted their own schemes. I mean, look at the fake kidnapping of the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. They had FBI informants posing as civilians. Or even look at January 6th, what happened with Ray Epps. So I knew going into this, I already had a hunch that the FBI was going to concoct whatever notion they're going to try and spew onto people. They want us to believe that, you know, this 22-year-old by the name of Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk, that there's some sort of note that the casings were engraved with anti-fascist rhetoric, and somehow he was able to disassemble the gun climbing down, but then put the gun back in detail. There's so many flaws to it. And I've seen people, all sorts of areas examining this and looking into details. I don't believe the narrative. I don't believe the official story. And I, even more so now, because there's so many flaws to the official narrative. You know, now that they've captured Tyler Robinson and put him into custody, apparently his dad, you know, pulled him out to law enforcement, but they apparently also got his roommate / lover, who's transgender, male to female, and apparently the transgender person is, you know, cooperating with the FBI. And then Kash Patel came out recently and said that they had to do aggravated interview. I forget the exact wording that they use, but it was something like that. They had to aggravate the interview to get word out from the supposed suspect's roommate to confess about a note that supposedly Tyler Robinson wrote before his shot at Charlie Kirk that said it was evidence to that. But we don't even know what the note is because they claim now that the evidence has disappeared. That the note has been discarded. So we don't even know about this note. We don't know. It just seems like all of this is just one concocted narrative that they're just adding more to the story. It's like improv, you know, the and more and more and more and more. They're just trying to add on more layers to try to concoct this story. I think the main goal that they want people is to be distracted from actually investigating this story, which obviously people, you know, hats off to people on social media and the internet that are willing to actually compile data and evidence and expose what truly happened on that day. But I think what the FBI is trying to do purposely is try to manufacture this narrative that fits already in the domain of, you know, this kind of culture baiting scenario. So that's why they're incorporating transgenderism. And even before they tried to incorporate, you know, transgender and lefty lunatics and whatnot, there was word about, prior to that, that there was suspicious accounts of Muslim Arab Americans. And again, I find it so convenient that it kind of fits into that narrative, fits already into that narrative that already people are being more and more suspicious. And as I stated before, you know, if for whatever reason, let's say hypothetically that it was transgender lefty lunatics, it is, the Democrats and, their brainwashing and, the wokeism ideology. Let's say for a second, if that was true, why specifically did they chose September 10th to go after Charlie Kirk? And why specifically Charlie Kirk? Because we know that Charlie Kirk has been doing these college debates for quite a long time. He's been doing this for years. And he's been across the country. He's been in red states. He's been in blue states. He's been in liberal college campuses. He's been in more conservative liberal college campuses. So I don't know what would trigger someone to do this plot. So that's why I'm kind of like very, very, very skeptical and kind of like, just, I smelled the rot. I smelled the stink coming off the mouth of the FBI from Kash Patel and other people within the State Department that are telling us, this concocted story. That's why I kind of don't believe it. And when we look at the evidence, we've done prior segments about this, and we're going to get into more detail later on. But we have shown videos prior to the incident, because as I stated, if you want to know why someone may attempt on someone's life, you have to look at what was said prior to the incident. And when we look at past videos of Charlie Kirk, on his show, on interviews, on, Turning Point USA events, you could see that there was starting to be a transformation of Charlie Kirk, who was a devoted Christian, devoted American, and very devoted to pro-Israel, starting to turn the knob of, now I'm in a position to start questioning Israel. And the question is, okay, if this guy is pro-Israel, what would make someone start to turn the knob? Why would someone start to, rock the boat about a country that he's very devoted to? He's numerous times he has stated that, he loves and supports Israel. He's, kind of emphasized, genocide and kind of, been in support of it because of his faith, because of his religion. So why would he turn the other cheek? Well, we know from Max Blumenthal in the Gray Zone and Aina Priyapal putting this article together. We showed it before, so I'm not going to reread it again. But Charlie Kirk refused money from Netanyahu. And we know that Turning Point USA, the reason why this organization exists in America is because there's a lot of donors. There's a lot of billionaire donors that funneled their money into pushing Charlie Kirk to fund Turning Point USA. And when you are in a position, when you're a predominant figure, when you're an influencer, or when you're a person with this kind of power, and I think Charlie Kirk resembled a lot of that power because he had a lot of chapters of Turning Point USA. He got a lot of younger conservatives all together with these events and with these college debates. You're kind of in a position where you are kind of towing back and forth. You're kind of playing tug and war to the people that donated to funding your organization and your audience, your supporters. And because a lot of younger conservatives were starting to turn and look at Israel at a different light and starting to see the spotlight of the atrocity of the genocide that's going on in Gaza, Charlie Kirk may have had a moment because, he reaches out to his audience, he talks to those people, that maybe he's going to start looking into things that, and as Candace Owens, one of his longtime friends, even stated, Charlie Kirk appeared to be having a spiritual transformation. But We also know that there's been some insiders, some whistleblowers that have called out to say that Charlie Kirk felt threatened because being in a situation where you have, powerful donors and entities, and you spoke highly about a foreign country that has substantial power within the United States, that is going to put a burden onto you. You are now part of this kind of, mobster mentality, if you will, that you are a person that has to go out and promote this agenda, promote what the donors are paying you to promote. And if you start rocking the boat and turning the cheek, it's not great. It's not great. And we have seen this before. We have seen confrontations, not in the way that of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, but we have seen over time and time. I mean, look at what happened when Tucker Carlson got fired off of Fox News. He got fired because he was starting to question the narratives that Fox News didn't want one of its longtime hosts, one of the biggest hosts on television, to say to its audience. Or any other big, giant, amplified voices out there that are willing to stick their neck out and be truthful, be honest, and connect with their audience, even if it goes against a lot of the people that pay you or got you your position or got you your career. Look at, how many people want Julian Assange. Look at how the U.S. State Department, Hillary Clinton, the Democrats, Republicans, they wanted a piece of Julian Assange gone because this man, he was a journalist and he was sticking his neck out to report the truth to his audience that defied against powerful interest. So this is a conundrum, folks. This is the unfortunate thing. Now, I'm not putting my foot down and saying that, oh, well, it's definitely for certain that Israel did it. Case closed. End of story. But we do have to, in this moment, in 2025, we have to take it upon ourselves to further investigate it, to not just believe what the State Department is telling us, to not just take the FBI by its word, because we know the FBI has constantly lied to us. We know that they're a bunch of liars and scumbags. I mean, even Kash Patel himself. Unfortunately, people like to think that, well, the Trump administration is in and they're going to take on the deep state and they're going to be different and transparent. Well, here we are in September, months after Trump got inaugurated, and I don't feel that transparency. Do you feel the transparency? Do you feel like they're telling you the truth? When Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who amplified about Jeffrey Epstein, and was going to release the documentation, release the fact of who exactly killed Jeffrey Epstein. Do you feel truthful? Do you feel like they're telling you the truth when they just go on television and say, oh yeah, he self-deleted himself? No question about it. Oh yeah, the guy in Butler, Pennsylvania, he acted alone. Yeah, we're not going to investigate. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. We're not going to release the JFK files. We're not going to release the Epstein files. Which, by the way, at the time of this horrific incident, while America was in shock and horror, and while it was a very, 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 very emotional time for, I think, the world, not just America, to witness a predominant figure being gunned down, U.S. Congress immediately passed a bunch of bills. Under the rug, kept out of the dark, kept out of the radar, quietly passed a bunch of bills. Charlie Kirk, his body was still warm. And the U.S. Congress immediately took action to pass their substantial agenda that penalizes Americans. They did anti-BDS bills backed by Republicans and Democrats. They did a substantial bill of military aid for Israel. They allowed Israel to attack Qatar, that was dealing a peace summit that Trump organized, that he was trying to stop this war. Israel attacked Qatar, and they allowed it to happen. And they also passed, once again, to not release the Jeffrey Epstein files while Charlie Kirk was bleeding out. So that is sickening, folks. That is sickening, folks. And that's why I feel that there's way more to this story than what the FBI is revealing. So now that we're, kind of almost a week out of this situation, I want to show people this. So JD Vance went on to host Charlie Kirk's podcast. He sat in the chair. He's now kind of, I guess, temporarily hosting the show until they figure out what they're going to do exactly with this podcast. But here's the vice president having a conversation with Tucker Carlson, who Tucker Carlson is a friend of Charlie Kirk's. He was invited on to Turning Point USA. Tucker Carlson spoke highly of Charlie Kirk for inviting him on, but also Tucker Carlson is one of these people that, is rocking the boat, is rocking the narrative, and has questioned about Israel and their role in the United States and foreign entities and Netanyahu and the IDF. I mean, he just had on, I'm blanking on the name there, former Green Beret, former Lieutenant Colonel Tony Aguilar, who spoke against the Gaza humanitarian programs that Israel hasn't developed and the billionaire class, tries to amplify and support, and called it out and said it was a sham. So here's JD Vance, the vice president, talking to Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson, who knows Charlie Kirk, but also knows that Charlie Kirk was in this position and knows what happened at Turning Point USA. By the way, they were also angry at Dave Smith for appearing at Turning Point USA, who's a Jewish comedian. But Dave Smith is also another figure that has been vocal and critical about what's happening in Gaza. And that doesn't sit well for the billionaire class. That doesn't sit well for the people that are funding, Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA that helped him create this moment. So here's where the conversation, hear what Tucker Carlson has to say.
Team. That is exactly right. And good faith is the measure. And I have to say, I think now is exactly the wrong time to appropriate the memory of someone and the emotion that comes with that, the really intense emotion that all of us feel at his murder, and use it for your own parochial ends. Like, he stood for this, and I think the reason that Charlie was able to bridge the gap, particularly in foreign policy, is because he had, for example, genuine affection for Israel, which he expressed to me in private many, many times. Like, I love Israel. I don't think we should have another forever war, regime change war against Iran. And I think that made complete sense to me. I sort of agree with that, actually.
So that was another point to be made about it. And that's why I think so many people that know Charlie Kirk has mentioned about, his struggles, that, as Charlie Kirk is saying praises about Israel because of his faith, because of his background, and, saying that he went there with his wife and it's beautiful, blah, 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 all the statements that he made about it. He's also a very devoted American, and he even said, as an American, I can't agree to going into wars, in particular attacking Iran, for a foreign country. And he talked to Trump about it, and that was what was in the article with that Max Blumenthal and anti-imperialism put together for the Gray Zone, is Charlie Kirk, kind of criticized Trump for that, saying, hey, I don't think it's right for my American sense, I know I'm pro-Israel, but I'm an American first. I'm born here in America. I'm supporting America. And as an American, it's not in our interest. It's not in our interest. And you can see from polling that nobody wanted to go to war with Iran. But the people that did want to go to war with Iran were either very pro-Israel, Zionists, or they were warmongers. And we attacked their nuclear facilities. We that happened. So it put Charlie Kirk in that kind of situation where you're kind of in a rock and a hard place to decipher, okay, if I'm going to be pro-American, I'm going to have to start questioning this foreign entity that I've also been praising for many years. But here's where it got interesting.
And so it allowed both sides to talk to him because they felt like this person doesn't hate me. It doesn't need to get existential. It's not about disliking me or some weird bigotry. But I don't think it's helpful for people to jump in, particularly foreign heads of state, to say, this is what, he lived for my cause or whatever. That's disgusting, actually. Don't do that. That turns everybody off. You don't help your own cause by doing that. And it's also literally untrue. So I just hope that we can continue in, I'm not exaggerating, the spirit that he operated in, which is one of love for other people, including people we disagree with, and don't make it, as small bore as that. That doesn't help.
Yeah, so one of the issues...
So he doesn't say the name, I think, because after what we saw with Charlie Kirk, I think Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Dave Smith, Max Blumenthal, Ayanna Priyapal, anybody that has spoke about this, I feel like they're kind of now reflecting on, if this theory was true, that Israel did plot to go after Charlie Kirk for, not staying aligned with the narrative, that now we're kind of in a position of, oh my God, what does that mean for someone like me? What does that mean for someone that has been vocal about this for quite some time? And I think why they went after someone like Charlie Kirk, for example, is because he had more of a following, especially with a younger crowd. And this is the big thing with Israel and their propaganda machine and, the PR that they're trying to produce, is they're losing the young support. There's not a lot of young people that support genocide. The older demographic kind of go along with it because they've been preached about it over generation. That's kind of like doctrine into them. They've been propagandized and programmed to believe that, and the second coming of Christ, Jesus bait, all that. So for the older demographic, you could see why exactly they're supportive of this, but the younger people, they're now going into and influencing politics. That is going to be troublesome for Israel. That's going to be troublesome. And even people like Tim Pool, who no doubt is a very, staunch supporter of Israel, very much so. He even, got jealous on the fact that other podcasters got to go on trips to Israel, and I didn't. I didn't get to participate. Why don't you like me, BB? He was getting all whiny about that. He's even stated that, he feels worried because the younger demographic aren't going to be interested in Israel after this, that they're going to be losing a lot of support. And, genocide tends to do that. When you're bombing 9 countries and playing the victim at the same time, it kind of loses momentum. It kind of loses the ability for people to have sympathy and respect for you. And that's really, really transparent with the younger demographic as they're witnessing in real time because of social media. Hence why they wanted to ban TikTok and get a bunch of ghouls to, start censoring people on social media. Not just the left anymore, it's also the right. Why they want to do that is because they're worried that younger people are witnessing in real time the horrificness, and they don't want to be a part of it. They don't want to. Why would they support it? Why would they have sympathy when they see out in the open, IDF soldiers sniping and targeting young children and, going into blown up apartment buildings and parading around in women's lingerie and joking about it or even threatening people? threatening people on social media, threatening podcasters that they've interviewed. That, hey, if you question our motives, it's gonna be a shame what happens to you. I've seen a lot of mafia movies, folks. It seems to be going in that direction. Again, I can't confirm nor deny it, but it just seems to go in that direction. But let's see here.
Tucker, and I agree with you that he would express disagreements with the administration on. There are two that jump out. Is one, Charlie was a hardliner on immigration. He wanted us to control our borders as much as possible. Yes. He wanted us to ramp up the deportations. I remember having conversations with Charlie where he would say, why aren't the deportations higher? Why aren't you doing more? And I would talk to him. But it wasn't, hey, I don't understand this or I disagree with you and therefore I'm going to blast you and assume that you're in bad faith. It's, I'm a free citizen. I love you guys. I supported you guys, and I'm going to use my platform to try to accomplish as much good as I possibly can. And I think that made him such an effective operator. And I would talk to Charlie. I'd say, Charlie, well, look, here are the reasons why. And as you've seen, Tucker, we've ramped up deportation numbers. We have actually, we have about foreign policy. First being regime change
fairly lengthy
is not a
there.
No more. This can't become a bigger thing. This can't become a broader thing. And again, I think he modeled a really good way of applying pressure, of disagreeing when you do disagree, but also recognizing that so long as you're operating in good faith, we're all part of the team. And that's something I'm going to try to take from Charlie's legacy is not that we're always right, not that we can't take criticism, but that we all should try to work together.
It did worry me because I think your description is perfect. He was one of the very few who took that message and stood by it. I mean, right to the very end. This cannot get bigger. We don't want another regime change war. But man, some of the people who send money to Turning Point, his donors, were very tough on him. So tough on him that I could feel it. I talked to him a lot in the last few months, and he was under enormous pressure. He never bent. He never became bitter.
He kept his integrity to the very end.
To the very end. And I just think it's important to say that because it's true.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty bold and powerful to say that right to the vice president. I mean, JD Vance is in the host chair. And Tucker Carlson, when he was on Turning Point USA, say when Dave Smith, and made the statements, talking about, the lack of transparency with the Epstein files, the coordination of a foreign government and colluding with politicians, how we're doing regime change wars for foreign countries' interests ahead of our own. That's rocking the boat of a lot of powerful figures, a lot of powerful entities that pay into Turning Point USA, that pretty much bought Charlie Kirk into the position that he was in. And, as I said, I've seen a lot of mafia films. I've seen the mobster side of things. When you get involved with the family, and then you start wondering if that family has your best interest, when you start actually becoming an individual person with your own thoughts and ideas, that could potentially lead to, harmful, very harmful direction. And it's not even just, on the conservative side, it's also leftist side. If you, get out of line, you're not part of the tribe, or you start to question it, or go in a different direction, or you start, being an independent person and critically analyzing things, they come after you. They come after you on both sides. That's why I don't consider myself a liberal or conservative. I don't consider myself a faction of this political dichotomy or this bipolar politics that we live in, where everything has to be one side or the other. And if you're not on this side, then you're obviously on this side. And if you're not on either side, then you're the worst person of all. Blah, blah, blah. Like, no wonder why we have political violence. Because we can't actually be just individuals and form our own opinions. That, yes, I can agree on certain things the left does and the right does. I don't have to subscribe to a specific party or a specific goal or a specific purpose. If I know that purpose is not doing, good things for people, if I could see the harmfulness that's doing. So obviously it was shaking the boat there, and Tucker Carlson addressing that was pretty big, especially to the vice president here. Also, here's Candace Owens, who's a close friend to Charlie Kirk, and a lot of people were slamming on Candace Owens immediately because they figured that, Candace Owens is going to say something, about Israel or anti-Semitic or whatnot. And they were just starting to pounce and pounce and pounce on her, even though I take Candace Owens' word on it, regardless of, what she says about it, because she was the one that was the closest to Charlie Kirk out of a lot of the individuals on social media that are immediately pouncing on her. And here, as Colin Rugg points out, Candace Owens claims threats were made to Charlie Kirk during an intense intervention with Bill Ackman. See, Bill Ackman, that was the billionaire that Tucker Carlson mentioned directly on the stage at Turning Point USA when he said, I don't know this guy. How did he get his money? How did he become this wealthy billionaire with all these assets and companies? How does Jeffrey Epstein get a bunch of this money? I thought this guy was a math tutor. How does a teacher get to have his own island and get private jets and escort rich people? How is that possible? Like, asking genuine questions. And that obviously disturbed and annoyed and intensified a relation with, Charlie Kirk and the donors that were paying for Turning Point USA. So, Bill Ackman in the Hamptons weeks ago, Owens claims Kirk was having a change of heart on Israel before his death and says that he was contacted by Benjamin Netanyahu. Well, we know Benjamin Netanyahu through his appearances on Fox News shortly after Charlie Kirk's death, that Bibi stated that Charlie Kirk was invited to Israel. Charlie Kirk was invited to Israel, and the wording that he used was it didn't sound like it was like a free trip. Like, come enjoy, you sit at the beach and drink some mimosas and you'll enjoy some hummus and listen to tales of our ethnic people. Like, it didn't sound like it was from a travel brochure. What Bibi was projecting there sounded more like, you're going to come with us. We're going to go into a back room here, and we're going to show you what's what. And that's kind of a bit disturbing. Considering this guy was a friend of Israel. And this is how they're treating their so-called friends. Just like the saying goes, it's better to be an enemy of the United States than a friend of the United States. I mean, look at all the people that were CIA assets that we worked with, that we had relations with, that are no longer here. Osama bin Laden, Muammar Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein. They were all friends of the United States at one point, and then no longer here. So that's what Candace Owens' take of it. And again, I can't confirm nor deny it. I'm just showing you this kind of information. This is also kind of very eerie. Was days before that specific day when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, Ben Shapiro had an interview with Mark Levin. And these are very two predominant, vocal, pro-Israel, pro-genocide, United States involvement with Israel, very pro-APEC individuals. And we saw Charlie Kirk's interview with Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro kind of freaked out because Charlie Kirk was starting to question about Israel. And here, this is days before even that interview, where Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, according to James Lee here, says you can't be a leader of the right if you think the president is covering up a Mossad blank ring or struck Iran for Israel, Ben Shapiro. So they're talking about Charlie Kirk. They're talking directly about Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk mentioned about Epstein, mentioned about sex trafficking, mentioned about how the president and the State Department were working on behalf of a foreign nation, and he did not believe that it was the best interest of America to attack Iran. So this was days beforehand, and watch the little chatter that they have before Charlie Kirk died.
You and I, had people who we thought were conservatives sound a lot like the Marxist Islamists who were attending this event last week, don't they?
I think it's exactly right. Unfortunately, there's a grievance culture that has become the dominant strain on the left that says that all people in the world who are poor, who have bad lives, that is the fault of the West, that is the fault of Israel, it's the fault of capitalism, it's the fault of the Jews, it's the fault of anyone except for themselves. They have no agency, and thus all the systems must be torn down from the rooftops all the way down to the ground. And you see that sort of mirrored on a weird horseshoe part of the right that is now arguing sort of the same thing, that the problems that people have are intractable, that there's a shadowy group that's manipulating all of this, that America actually was never great. America was wrong in World War II. America never landed on the moon. And these kind of two forces are now bizarrely joining hands in the middle. It's very strange.
Do you think there's enough of
No, what's very strange is that you took one point that could have just been its own separate issue and tried to cultivate it into every other point. Well, now we're getting these people that are questioning about the man on the moon, and they don't believe that America's great, and they think there's a shadowy government, and like, holy crap. This is just, it's so crazy. It's so crazy that you had this conversation with Mark Levin about how there's, nefarious people on the right that are starting to question things. They're starting to look into things, and we can't allow that because it seems like they're doing a horseshoe effect. It seems like they're diving into like cultural Marxism, this kind of socialism that, they're starting to question things like, 9/11, and they're starting to question things about, our involvement in foreign affairs, and, I don't understand this. And they said that, well, they blame everyone except themselves. Well, actually, I think a lot of these people are blaming themselves. Tucker Carlson blamed himself for supporting the Iraq war, which is why I think it was good for him to leave Fox News and be fired and start his own, journey with his own production, his own interview series, and his channels on YouTube and Rumble and whatnot. I think Candace Owens, the same thing. Like, I think these people, the reason that they're doing this is because they're having an internal struggle, because they've been perceived to believe all these things. They've been told to believe all these things, to believe that, America's not doing anything nefarious. We're not going against our own people. The FBI would never lie to you. They're the FBI. They would never lie to you. Law enforcement never lies to you. Obviously, 9/11 was how it happened. We don't need to investigate. We don't need to get a bunch of people involved. What are you, some sort of truther? Remember they coined the phrase truther? Oh, you're some sort of truther. I want to know information about a specific horrific day that impacted a lot of people. Yeah, you damn truther. What, are you going to research it? Funny how that, and hearing that also with COVID, hearing that with Russiagate. Again, it's about the truth. It's about they don't want people to start realizing, having self-actualization, and diving into these controversial stories and finding out for themselves. Just like how they don't want people to investigate on Charlie Kirk assassination. They want people to just go with the narrative, tell people, trust me, it's definitely, a bunch of liberal wackos. It's transgender. It's the death cult of transgenderism. That's what it is. Okay? Case closed. Don't talk about the private jet. Don't talk about that. No. If you do mention it, you're anti-Semitic. You don't support Charlie Kirk and his family. How dare you bring that up? And something needs to be done. But anyway, let's hear the rest of this.
An effort to push back. I find that conservative groups and conservative organizations that have these weekend events and these seminars, whether they're for young people or think tanks or that sort of thing, they sort of sprinkle these events with these kooks. They sprinkle these events with these American haters who claim to be American firsters and are fake MAGA and even stab the president in the back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an attempt by some of these organizations to, quote unquote, maintain the big tent. But the reality is that, as many have said, the problem with a big tent is that you may end up with many, many clowns inside. And the most fundamental thing is that just because you're saying somebody votes Republican, that does not mean that they ought to be the preacher at the front of the church. They're not the person who ought to be leading the movement if they are spending all day criticizing the president of the United States as covering up a Mossad rape ring or being a tool of the Israelis for hitting an Iranian nuclear facility, a thing he has said literally his entire career that he was going to do. And so it seems to me that if we are to hold anything in sort of reverence, it ought to be the fundamental tenets of the American Republic, which I believe to reside in conservatism. And if conservative organizations are simply going to give up the ghost on that in order to maintain a sort of pseudo coalition, that is a gigantic moral and political mistake.
Gigantic political and moral mistake. That we have people within inside the coalition of conservatism having a different viewpoint, stepping a little outside of the agenda and starting to, self-actualize, starting to have epiphanies, trying to transform, try to better understand the world that we're in. That asking questions is apparently so bad. I mean, you could take that. You could take this rhetoric and apply it to what happened with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Like all these young people that are voting Bernie Sanders, they're defile against the Democratic Party. Why would you not support a woman candidate? Oh, these misogynists, these, homophobic Bernie Sanders supporters. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You are not sacrificing yourself to the establishment. You are not sacrificed. You are not a puppet to the establishment. And once you realize you can get out of being a puppet and being an actual individual, they despise you for it. Despise you for it. Just like all the Democrats got angry when people saw through the Clinton campaign. They saw through Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And a lot of the Bernie Sanders supporters that got screwed over by that party went to vote for Donald Trump. And now here, Donald Trump people, they are realizing that they're getting screwed over by the deep state. They're getting screwed over by this malicious force that Ben Shapiro thinks it's hokum. And they're starting to question things. They're starting to agitate. They're starting to rock the boat. They're starting to realize that, wait a second, we're not being told the right things. That something's fishy, something's odd about this. But these two are so concerned that something needs to be done. That certain agitators that we thought were part of our camp are starting to, step out of line. Again, I'm not confirming nor denying anything, but I'm just saying it's kind of very suspicious you would say that. And since Charlie Kirk's assassination, this is James Lee again, 250 U.S. legislators are on Israel promoting the 50 States One Israel project. House bans the Pentagon from boycotting Israel, $650 million military aid to Israel. Bill proposed to revoke U.S. passports for Israel critics. That was on the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. That was the perfect opportunity for the House of Representatives, the U.S. Congress, to step in and pass these unbelievable bills under the radar because they knew that America and the rest of the world were in mourn. They were torn. They were, seeing the shock and anger and just how horrific the scene was with Charlie Kirk. So they took that opportunity because people are going to be emotionally scarred at the moment and they're not going to see this right away. They just took it the time to pass all these bills. And here's James Lee explaining that process.
Over the rainbow, why then, oh, why can't I?
50 states, one Israel. What is that? Well, the state of Israel just posted this on their Instagram a few hours ago. Quote, the 50 states, one Israel delegation has landed in Israel. 250 American legislators will spend the coming week in Israel and experience it as it truly is by doing this kind of thing, which I guess is required for all U.S. government officials. Okay, I just want to point out to everybody that since Charlie Kirk was assassinated on September 10th, the U.S. government has blocked the Epstein files release, passed an amendment that bans the Pentagon from boycotting Israel, proposed a bill from Marco Rubio to revoke passports for critics of Israel. The House also approved $650 million for Israel's missile defense, and as you just saw there, Marco Rubio visited Israel. And now, once again, there are 250 legislators in Israel at the 50 states, one Israel delegation being serenaded with Somewhere Over the Rainbow, a song known as a Project Monarch trigger for mind control MK Ultra slaves to activate them to do bidding against their will. And this is all totally normal, right?
All totally normal, totally America first. Don't question it. Just go with the flow. You don't want to be this kind of Marxist cultural, wokey. You don't want to, rock the boat. You just want to go with the flow. Why would you question something like that? That just sounds anti-Semitic right there. That you think that there's a coordination of a powerful entity coordinating with the U.S. government to epitomize against the American interest. Like the fact that they're not even with the anti-boycott, anti-BDS bill, but the fact that the Secretary of State is proposing revoking U.S. passports to American citizens that criticize a foreign country. How is that allowed? How can you look yourself in the face, call yourself an American first, call yourself a MAGA supporter, and be okay with this law? Be okay that your own citizens, because God forbid, if you question one specific region, you're allowed to question any country. You're allowed to be critical of any country on earth. You're an adult, grown-ass person. You're allowed to criticize. You're allowed to question things. I encourage people to ask more questions. But of course, we have American politicians defying against Americans. As one of their own, barely, his body is cold. This is all in the same goddamn day. So, while people, are told to believe that this is some sort of woke lefty, transgender movement, and, that's why we got to start a civil war. I see all the comments on X and social media. It's just awful. It's awful. It's one of the reasons I actually loathe modern society is because people that are so encapsulated into their factions, into their groups, into their tribes, and just gotten so brainwashed that we can't even have a goddamn civil conversation anymore. No wonder political violence runs amok. No wonder. Because nobody can be civil. Because we're all being programmed. We're all being programmed to beat the crap out of each other, knowing that the worst nefarious people are the ones that are legislating while an American is dying. Those are the worst people. Those are the people telling you to shut up and beat the crap out of each other. You're being programmed. You're being mind controlled. So that's why even someone like me, who's here in Canada, is willing to question this. I'm willing to question this. I'm willing to look for more information and dive into more and more about this investigation, because I don't believe for a second what the FBI is saying, what U.S. law enforcement, what any mainstream outlet is saying about this. It seems like complete crap. And the fact that U.S. lawmakers are defiant against Americans, do you think that's what Charlie Kirk would have wanted? That is legacy? A man who wanted to openly debate people and have conversations and to say love and respect one another, regardless of how you feel about each other, regardless of your political viewpoints, regardless of, your upbringing. Do you think that's what he wanted? Do you think that's in his name? As he's bleeding out from the neck, as his body is barely cold, that you're going to defy against Americans? Just truly, truly putrid people that work at the state.